You can tell her anything. She's a real good listener. You can tell her anything.
Yo, what's up? It's your girl, Father Longlegs. You know me, Daddy T. Oh my god, it's good to be back. This is a new season of You Can Tell Me Anything, and I am so excited for my guest today. He's on tour currently, but when you're listening to this, you can catch him still on tour, and you can get all his tour dates at hoopercomedy.com. He has a podcast called Achilles Heel, and he's an America's Got Talent star and very funny comedian. Put your hands together for Alex Hooper. What up? Yeah, I imagine everyone's cheering and clapping at home.
Father Longlegs, I love that.
I feel like it came out of me, you know how people have those AKAs in podcasts, and I didn't have one before, and then I would do like my friends. Have you done the Daily Zeitgeist? It's like Jack O'Brien.
No, I've never done that one.
Oh gosh. Oh, you'd be great on it. But I used to work with Jack at Cracked, but anyways, they like do a whole thing of AKAs. So when they would have me on, I would feel like really, it felt like I wore the wrong outfit to like I didn't check the dress code for a formal attire party because I would never have one. So I can't remember exactly where it came out of, like if someone gave it to me or what, but now I call myself that. But it's actually gone into the confusion because I, like in an executive or like in a general meeting, I had to like explain it, and they were really confused. Like they were like, but who is like, we kind of just want to talk to Teresa Lee, like not Father Longlegs. And I was like, no, it's just me. It's just a moniker. It's just my name. Like
I get that so much because like my like festival nickname is Stump, and the first time I went on America's Got Talent, I was going as Stump, and I had this whole backstory about how I live in a tree and I'm this magical creature. And then like we went through like a 40-minute interview about Stump, and then I get a call like 3 days later. They were like, so Alex, we sat down in the meeting with producers, and I started going over the fact that you live in a tree and you have a tail, and they told me to please call you again and find out who you really are, because what is this? And I was like, okay, so now I'll give you the real story now that we've gone through, almost an hour of made up fictional magical character.
Oh my god, that's hilarious. Wait 1 second. Can you turn your input up a little? Because I think that it's quiet on my end. I don't know if it's just the...
Is that better?
Yes, thank you. Sorry.
Okay, cool. There you go.
That is hilarious, and also just a great way to describe Hollywood of like, they, to your face, are just, they either have no idea what they're talking about, or they like what they see, but then they have no power to like it. You know what I mean? Like, so it's like you still go through the motions of like...
Yeah, I mean, honestly, I give credit to them because they were like, who do you want to promote? Do you want to promote Alex Hooper or whoever this Stump thing is? And I was like, probably a good point that I use my own name if it's going to be spread around the internet and seen by millions of people.
Yeah, well, but both are great, but I know Alex Hooper, so I'm partial to that. Well, speaking of which, before we get too far, I like to start with a good confession, just for our listeners to get to know you. So, is there something good you'd like to confess?
Ooh, let me. What is something good that I want to confess? I mean, I spent many years completely in love with my best friend, who eventually realized it and proceeded to treat me like garbage because of it.
Oh my god! Wow, that sounds like a big confession.
Yeah. I mean, I've talked about it like a little bit, but most people don't know like that this was like literally the beginning of me turning my life around into this positive optimist. Is I had to break free of one horrible relationship so that I could realize and discover what was actually out there waiting for me.
Oh wow, I love that, because I have a different situation, not with the best friend, but similarly like hit rock bottom relationships. But with those kinds of things, they tend to... It's not out of nowhere, there are like many like shitty relationships before the big dump. I don't know why I went with this dump metaphor.
By all means. Everybody go to your toilet, get the big dump going. On Instagram, do a photo dump, visit the dump. You could be down in the dumps. Humpty Dumpty had a great fall. What do you need from me today?
Well, at first I was like dump, like getting dumped, and then I really, it tickled me to make the poop joke.
Hey, I'm here for it. Listen, there's still a part of me that's a first-year comic that's just like, it's all poop and masturbation. Yay!
I know. I still like. I mean, because on stage I'll like write out more. Well, I hope this is smarter jokes, and sometimes they're just dumb. But it's just so fun. Like that's why I do like Twitter, as shitty as, as toxic of a place that it is. I'm like, I can just do I love stupid, childish jokes, the clever, dumb puns, innuendos.
Too.
They're just fun.
I have to steer myself away from puns sometimes when I'm writing out comedy bits, because what happens for me is I think of a premise and then I go to my computer and I write it out as far as it will go, and I literally have to stop myself from coming up with very, very cheesy lines, and I have to just write them and get them out of me and then realize that they're stupid and I can't say them on stage because I'm better than that. I'm not some dad joke comedian, although part of me kind of wants to be.
I know, it's like be who you are, because I imagine people who are dad joke comedians feel free to be themselves. But I imagine if you hold yourself that way and you had other parts of you wanted to express, that would also feel very limiting. So.
Yeah, very much so. Just do whatever you need to do to feel like yourself.
Yeah. Well, I love that. This kind of transitions into. I like to, before we get into the main story, kind of ask my guests about their experience with therapy and mental health, because more in a light way, but because I started this pod because I started going to therapy late, and I loved how freeing it felt to be able to actually just talk about myself and experiences. But you mentioned it was a choice to become a positive, optimistic comedian. And for those who know Alex, he is very, very positive and just a bundle of light and joy. But also it's very apparent to anyone who knows you that it's not from a shut out the negative kind of way. You are doing the work and you have the experiences and you are empathetic. But it's so yeah, I'd love to hear more about that, because you said it was a choice, and it does seem that's how I've known you. But do you go to therapy? What do you do to work on yourself, and what's your sort of self-care routine in that way?
Yeah, so I don't go to therapy. And it's because I at some point in my life I know I will, but I had a really bad experience as a child. My parents got divorced when I was really early. I had a really horrible eczema, one of completely covering my entire body. I was hospitalized multiple times as a kid. I was just talk about being uncomfortable in your own skin. That couldn't have reigned more true for me. And so I grew up with this horrible pain, which kind of transitioned into this anger and deep sadness that was expressed in a multitude of ways, but mainly through absolute chaos and unpredictable energy unloads that I just couldn't really hold inside anymore, and I would just blow up. So my parents started me in therapy really, really young. But
how old were you?
The first time I started going, 6.
Oh, wow. So, that's a common thing I've heard from, because, I mean, it really, there's no, right or wrong answer. Some people on this pod have never gone, or gone and hated, or just never want to. But a common theme I hear is a lot of folks who've gone as children, have had negative experiences. Not everyone, but it seems pretty common that would, I understand why that would deter you from wanting to go as an adult, because it must be such a different experience when you're forced to go, and your parents tend to be the provider of safety, and suddenly there's a stranger there, and it must be a whole thing.
Yeah, well, at that time, I'm such a confused state of being that I can't even reckon with the fact that this person is here to help me and kind of guide me through this process. And so over the years, my parents made me go to all these different therapists, but I was in such an angry state in my life that I refused to do the work. I have literally destroyed multiple therapists' office, and I mean picking up their plants, throwing them against
Hulk
the wall.
style. Oh my god.
Oh yeah, super to the point where I was actually fired from.
You were fired?
Therapists. Yes. They said he can't come back in here anymore. He's too destructive. And I mean, this is how bad it got. And I'm not sure I've ever said this on a podcast or not, but I was so committed to my parents being wrong about how this was the way to fix me that I refused to speak. And when I was 15, I went to think in therapy. They were like, Alex, you have to do this work. We're paying a lot of money out of pocket for you to get this help from this top of the line guy in Maryland. This is $200 an hour. don't waste this money. And as soon as they told me that, I was like, I'm going to go in there and not say a single word for every single session. So for 4 sessions straight, I literally refused to speak. I sat there for an entire hour. He would try to ask me questions, and I would just sit there and stare at him. And then eventually he said, are you ever going to talk in here? Because my parents are furious, obviously. They're coming out and says, they're like, what do you talk about? And the guy's like, he won't talk. He won't do it. I'm such a stubborn asshole, Teresa. Like, honestly, like I'm still working on my stubbornness.
I hear that. Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
So, no, this is how bad it got.
Yeah.
When I finally did speak, I'm 15 years old. He's got a picture on his desk of his daughter. And I just said, is that your daughter? And he's like, yeah, we're not going to talk about that. And I was like, that's the only thing I'll talk about. He goes, and he's like, I'm not talking about that with you. And I was like, do you think she likes to get fucked in the ass?
Oh, my God.
At 15. This man is mortified. He has a picture on his daughter of his desk, the person he loves probably more than anything else in the world. And this is the one thing I'm going to talk to him about. I was a monster, and I welcomed it into my life. And the more devious and destructive I could be, the more I enjoyed going down that rabbit hole.
No, wow. I mean, well, I feel like I'm tearing up only because, I mean, I'll acknowledge, like, obviously talking about this with all the self-reflection you've done, because it does sound like that probably caused a lot of pain in the moment, but also knowing you're 15 and also maybe having, now I'm not in that place anymore, but I've also been, the kid who acts out to get attention because I felt hurt, and having close family members that have gone through it, like, hearing that made me tear up because that when as soon as you said I refuse to speak, I knew exactly that feeling, and it hurts. It's like a ball of fire in your throat. Like, because it's not that you are trying to hurt others, it's that you feel so hurt. And I imagine maybe you didn't have the words to say it, but like as an adult hearing this and hearing like parents explaining how it's expensive and they're trying so hard, like, of course they love you. They don't need to say that. But as a child, you don't know that. And when you hear parents telling you need to work on stuff because of money, like that is like one of the sharpest stings. I'm like tearing up because it's like that feeling makes you want to climb up because you don't know how to get the love you need, and it's almost like you are self-destructing to get to the point where they can love you again. I'm so glad that you got through that, but that's so just heartbreaking to hear, like, for baby 15 Alex, because I know, it sounds like you were aware that you were acting out, but you didn't feel loved.
Oh, yeah. I wanted to die, and I wanted the entire universe to implode with me. And that was my entire MO back then, was just how many people can I piss off in a day? If you're happy, how can I make you sad? How can I bring you into my level of hell that clearly I didn't sign up for, but somebody else instilled this in me? And so when we talk about, like, how did I get to this positive place, I have spent years reconciling and forgiving myself for the person that I was back then, the kid that didn't know any better, that was just trying to reduce any sort of discomfort that I was feeling, both mentally, physically, and emotionally. And now I've gone completely in the other direction, and all I want is for you to feel good if you're around me. And I feel like I'm making up for years of lost time by going exactly the opposite direction that I used to be in.
That's so beautiful. I mean, I definitely I got to know you more over quarantine, which is funny because it's like we haven't been able to do shows or see each other in person, but I feel like just even in the last like year through digital interactions, like I've definitely felt impacted by your energy. And so I mean, I'm sure like it's working, but I love that. And I'm so glad that you found that on your own. I think the thing we forget sometimes as like adults is like because we remember everything as us, right? But when you're a child, your brain is developing. It's still a full person, but I do think a lot of people don't realize as adults, even if you didn't get what you need, like now you are an adult and it's harder. I don't think it's easy, but you can now give it to yourself. It takes some time. Like I had to learn that, but that's the beautiful thing. Like I don't expect kids. I would never blame like a 15-year-old for not getting what they need. But now I'm like 31, so bleep, no. But but now when I have moments like feeling sad or moments when I remember how, the trauma or anything, I'm just like, okay, remember it, but also remember now you are that adult. So parent yourself, bitch, or stop crying.
Yeah, no, exactly. And don't be hard. Don't be hard on the child that you used to be. Like if you were acting
Yeah.
out, if you look back and you go, God, that's embarrassing. It's okay. We all were learning. Like you said, none of our brains are fully there yet. We don't know how to be a human. And so we're trying out all these iterations that make sense to us at the time. And looking back, you're like, well, why did I ever think that was a good idea? Because I didn't know any better.
And you're trying it out to learn it's not. I did nothing like the not talking for that long, but I one time in class got in trouble for, I don't remember what made me want to do it, but I do remember the feeling. And when you said that, it kind of like triggered that memory of like, I just kept saying, I think I kept saying like, I'm weird. Oh, that was exactly what it was. I remember now. Like it came back to me. But every time like a teacher would call me, anytime someone would like pass me that paper, I was just like, I'm weird. And I was like a good student, and it baffled the teacher so much that it annoyed her, and she sent me to the principal's office. And I remember feeling like my brain was going like, you have to believe you can't say anything else, because they were like, stop doing this. And I was like, I'm weird. I wouldn't. And I started actually even trying to express myself through the words I'm weird, to the point where I was like, I'm weird. Like, oh, I can't help it. Because I think what I wanted subconsciously was someone to be like, something's wrong with her. Let's take her to the doctor and care for her.
Right.
But I was like creating a false malady because I didn't know how to describe being sad. So
but also that compulsion is inviting people to let them know like, oh, like she's weird, so that's why she's acting this way. And it gives you an excuse to keep doing this because you are being weird and you're acknowledging it. So people are like, oh yeah, she's just weird like that. And so you're putting yourself in this bubble, and then other people are just like, oh yeah, she's just in there.
Yeah, man, this is like, I feel like I'm learning, just even through talking to you, like learning a lot just by you being authentic. I love that so much. No, I know it sounds cheesy. Sometimes I'm like, oh God, I started this podcast to just, as a comedian being like, I'm just going to have funny conversations with my friends. And then somehow like, and I love it, but a lot of them will get so deep, and then like a lot of the listeners who I love so much, but they'll like share, they're like, oh, this is really like, helping with trauma, and I'm like, damn, is my podcast making me less funny? Because I'm just like, here's all my deepest, darkest shit that I don't talk about on stage.
That's my podcast too. And the thing is, like, even though I'm on this like rainbow side of life where I always try to be like happy, I embrace the dark, and my humor is extremely dark. It's also very silly, and that's why I get away with saying really horrible things, because people know that it's coming from a place where I'm kidding, and I'm joking. Clearly I don't actually think this way, but like my thoughts are still, there's still this part of me that like marinates inside that is just like, it's like, we can end it all right now. We can go back to our devilish ways. We can destroy the world. And I'm just like, no, we don't want to do that anymore. We're past that. We now speak to people, like all of these things. We don't bark at old people anymore, Alex.
Oh my God.
Another thing I used to do when I was like 15 to 17, old people would walk by me and I was go, like, just to be a fucking dick.
Wow.
To be like, for them to go, these teenagers today, and I'm like, yeah, that's exactly right. We're gonna run the world, old timer. Like,
well, it's a little bit like the law of attraction, but you're leaning into the opposite end. But it does kind of, you like get what you put out, but you already not getting what you wanted, so you're like, might as well put out something worse.
Yeah. That's the thing, is sometimes people hear me talk about like my childhood because they think like, you must have always been like this, right? You're just this rainbow sprite that sprinkles joy wherever he goes. And I'm like, fuck no. Ask anyone who knew me growing up. I was one of the worst children you could imagine. I wasn't super violent, although a lot toward myself, not really toward others, but I was inflicting pain any way I could, verbally, emotionally, mentally. I mean, the amount of times I have like called my mom a cunt and all these other things, and like, I mean, literally just for the purpose of like, just to be a fuck ass, you know what I mean? Like, for no other reason than I'm in pain and now you're gonna feel it, which isn't fair to anyone that was trying to take care of me. And my family did everything to try to give me a good life. They really did. And I've asked my mom about this a lot, and she's like, there was no other option than for me to love you as much as I could. So even if you were going to resist it, I wasn't going to stop. And honestly, like, she was like, one day she said, like, this is like a month ago, she was visiting. She goes, "How am I your mother?" And I was like, "Mom, you're the only person that could have been my mother. Like, anyone else, I would have been out the fucking door when I was 12 years old. I would have been shipped off to boot camp or something." And it almost got there. It got really, really close. I mean, I wouldn't do any of my work in school. I refused to do homework. I dropped out when I was a senior. I just stopped going. And they were like, "You need to go to school." And I was like, physically dragged me there then. And they couldn't. So then I just didn't.
Wow. I mean, it's really, yeah, gosh, because I hear that. I feel so many things when I hear that, because I worked on a lot of my relationship with my mom, and it was a choice for me to stay. Like, we went through some times where I was like, oh, it's really unhealthy, and to the point, because she didn't get what she needed. So when I was younger and I needed her, she wasn't there. But now as an adult, I really don't want to resent her, even though it takes a long time to really fully work through it. Like, I'm sure I still have, doubts and triggers, but I made a choice to like keep her in my life and work on it. And it's something that I know not everyone like wants to do, because sometimes people are like, you just got to cut out some, because there are still times I'm like, God, why would she make me feel this way? But I think it is, now I'm of the camp of like, I fully accept that she couldn't give me what she needed, but I don't fault her. So, because I think you can need a lot. It seemed like based on your story, like even physically, like you needed a lot of extra attention and care, which is different from maybe like someone who didn't have like the eczema or whatever, but that's not your fault either. But also, it might not be your parents' fault if they don't know how to handle it. So I think that's the tricky part that people as adults forget, is like, it isn't really about anybody's fault, or sometimes there isn't a right way, right? Because sometimes it's just a difficult situation. But I think you saying like you forgive yourself and you found a way to be happy, that's like the clearest path to getting out. Because now I don't need my parents to, like, I would love for them to love me, but I don't need them to like care for me the way I did as a kid. So now I can just work on giving that to myself and like the relationship part. Whereas as a kid, it is a little harder to trust someone when your survival depends on them, I think.
But what a breakthrough that you went through to realize that, like, your mom was just trying her best and living out her own reality as she had learned it and passing it on to you, that she's not actually trying to diminish your presence in any way or make you feel this way. That's just what she was taught, and how she's passing it down. And for you to actually go through the steps to realize that and still be like, well, I'm not going to cut her out of my life. I'm still going to find a way to make room here because she's my mom, and that's important. That just shows tremendous growth on your part. And what my mom told me is, like, you, Alex, like, I all I can hope is that you never have a child that is in the type of pain that you were in. Aww. Because there's nothing you can do as a parent to minimize that pain. I mean, when people don't realize like how bad eczema can get, because most people that have it, they're like, my elbow's itchy, and I'm like, oh no, my entire body is inflamed. I'm covered in scabs. My eye is, when I was in 4th grade, it got so bad, my face started oozing pus, and my eye crusted over into itself, so I couldn't open my eye. And so literally I was going to school looking like one of the aliens in fucking a monster movie, just like my skin had been literally peeled off.
You were like allergic to living. You were like, I don't want to be here.
And that's what I thought. I was like, how on the earth could the universe do this to me? And I would pray. I wasn't religious, but I'd be like, can I have any other ailment? Can I be a dwarf? Can I be a paraplegic? Can I have my sister's diabetes? Can I have anything else other than fucking this? And you know, one of the things that really, when I started actually appreciating my life, one, the eczema did get better because stress does respond to stress in your body. But two, just alternative medicines came out, really strong medicines they started putting me on, and my skin started getting better. And all of a sudden, it wasn't the first thing I had to think about anymore. And that is such a game changer when everything is like, well, my skin hurts. I shouldn't be outside that long. I'm crusted over. I don't want people to look at me because I'm having a bad day. And suddenly it's like, oh, well, what kind of art can I create today?
Aww.
What can I go out and do with my friends? How can I physically make myself better because I'm not thinking about the eczema as much? And it's still here. I still have it all over me and it still affects me all the time, but it's just so much more minimal that I can get past it now and I'm actually able to live my life. And I mean, that was one of like probably 6 or 7 things that happened all in a few year period that like got me to where I am now. But like that was such a big one, you know?
I love that. That's so beautiful. Let's take a quick break. When we come back, we'll get your confession. And we're back. Alex, you've shared a lot already, but the time has come. I would love to know, is there anything you want to tell me?
Oh man. You know, of all the things that people don't know about me, I think only one person really knows this, and that's my fiance. Apparently I have very stinky feet.
Okay.
And I don't notice that.
How did you find this out? Is like in this world where people don't tell you when something's in your teeth or your fly is down, did someone tell you?
Someone that loves me, I would walk in the house and she'd be like, I can smell you from here. And I was like, well, yeah, I was just exercising for 2 hours. I went on a 6-mile run. And she'd be like, you don't understand how bad it is. It got to the point where she made me keep my shoes outside on the balcony.
What?
And
so it's the shoes too?
Yeah, well, because my feet will sweat, and then they'll go into the shoes, and then the shoes will smell. So now I actually have these things that like are like filled with like bamboo that are supposed to like take away odor that I have to put in my shoes every time. It was so bad that like I would keep tennis shoes in my car to go play tennis, and my fiance would get in my car and they'd be in the trunk, and the trunk is its own thing. It's closed off. It's not like it's like an SUV, and she'd be like, your car smells so bad. And I'm like, I don't smell it. She's like, how do you not smell it?
Oh
and
my God.
Like, well, I don't think we smell ourselves that well. And so
it's like a cat, like walking to an apartment where someone has a cat. They don't smell it.
Exactly. But people will walk in my apartment and obviously it smells like 2 pugs. I don't really notice that because I live in it, and you know, but so
for the record, I've never noticed your stinky feet, but this is very funny to me, as we talked about the immaturity. It's just the idea of stinky feet is funny, not the idea of, I mean, it obviously sounds like it hasn't affected too much of your mental health, but has it? I mean,
no, that one doesn't really bother me because it's more so just like, I don't understand how her smell is so good that she smells this intense thing all the time when I don't. And I wonder, like, is she just that sensitive, or do other people smell this too? Because no one has ever complained about it to me in my life, which makes me think it's mostly just because I usually have shoes on. And I'm not in a place where a contained space where I'm just taking off my shoes and walking around barefoot around most people.
Well, I'm curious if she is sensitive to other. Well, so it's interesting that you asked that if she's just sensitive, because beyond just being sensitive to smells, the other thing I was thinking is sometimes you're really like, you know, she's your fiance, she loves you, so she may be more sensitive to you specifically in a, like, almost like, this is like, almost like I'm no scientific degree, so I'm literally talking out of my butt, but it sounds pseudoscience true. But I feel like I've definitely heard, actually, like, people do get, you know, when you're in love with someone, you do get more in tune with their physical, like, smells and ailments and things like that as a survival, like, you know, you're part of the family, the clan, so, like, they do get more in tune with things of your body, if that makes sense. I don't know how much this part is true, but I wonder if because of that relationship, she's more in tune to things of your body that she might find would be wrong with herself. Like, for example, if her feet were smelly, it might be something she would address like as a sign of something wrong. So then she notices it on you. But maybe for you, it's not a sign of anything. It's just how your feet smell.
I also learned this past year that I have a deviated septum, and I didn't know that. My right side, so when I was on America's Got Talent last season, we were getting COVID tested every 2 days for like over a month. And so I was getting, you know, the long Q-tip up tickle, the brain tickle, and they would go up both nostrils. And one day I probably had 20 of them already. And this nurse just goes, "Do you know you have a deviated septum on your right side?" And I was like, "What?" She's like, "No one's ever told you that?" And I went, "No, but it makes sense because when I do drugs at my right nostril, it doesn't really work." And she looked at me and she went, "What?" And I was like, "I'm just kidding. Kid show."
Oh my gosh.
I'm like, now I pretty much only do drugs at my left nose if I'm gonna do them.
I barely, because when you said deviated septum, the first thing I thought it was like, is that like is that related to a coke thing, or is it nose job, like generally nose jobby thing? But I thought it meant broken nose, but then I'm like, I don't know if I know what that means now.
It could come from that. It's basically just that your nasal passage is clogged. And like, I had this weird thing where in high school, the one thing I loved about my face was I really felt like I had a perfect nose, and people would tell me that because I hated my appearance overall. I really fucking disliked it. But my nose was good. And then at some point, I got this little divot thing happening right here. And actually, one of my friends from high school roasted me so well on Instagram. No one in all the roasts I've done, no one has ever brought up my nose. And she said, "Why does it always look like you're a kid pressing his face against a candy store window?"
That's so cute, though.
It was like, pat on the butt. That was great. Yeah.
That's a great roast, and it's like great because it captures like a vibe and like it's like good roasts aren't just, you know, like what are the word singular. Oh wow, I've forgotten English. The lowest common denominator, you know what I mean? Sometimes people just go for like singular traits, but when you capture someone's vibe and also like it's specific like that, but it's like kind of adorable. Yeah. I love that.
Well, that's the thing. It's like a kid pressed up against a candy store window. Like, that's totally me. Because I'm always excited about shit. No matter where I am, I find a reason to have fun and like let loose and just like not tight. If I feel myself tightening up, I can check in with myself and just go like, why? Like, just give yourself to whatever situation you're in. I'm a person, if you ever get lost, if we ever on a road trip together and we got lost, I'm the best person you could ever get lost with. Not because I have a great sense of direction and I will get us out, but I'll literally be like, who cares? What's over here? We're gonna see new things. Eventually, like,
I'm the opposite. I'm the worst, but I'm trying to get better because my boyfriend's a lot better at it. He's definitely more chaotic and like down for the ride. But I'm like, as soon as I'm off a plan, like the worst nightmare I could have is that driving and I don't know where I'm going, like, and I can't stop the car. And it's like, why? Who cares? It's still you. But like, I'm like, oh God, I'm getting further away from something I know and I don't know where I'm going. No, help.
I don't know how people were comedians in like the 70s and 80s when they would go on the road and literally they'd be like in the middle of rural Arkansas, driving through the night, trying to hold a map to figure out where you're going. Yeah. And then finally in the distance, you see one lone light that says bar and you realize, oh, that's the gig that I'm supposed to be at. God. I mean, that sounds insane to me, like to go on the road without actually having directions. When I first moved to LA, mapquest was a thing, like where you could print out directions online. But I bought a Thomas guide. Do you remember that?
No. Well, I lived in New York for most of my adult life, so I used Hopstop, which it was which subways. It really felt like a hack to which subways to take. And then, now Google Maps exists, and it's just a game changer.
No, a Thomas guide, they were like, when you go to LA, you have to buy this encyclopedia of the roads here. So keep it in your trunk, and no matter where you are, you'll be able to like have a map of. So I kept that thing in the back of my car, and then maybe like a year later, I got an iPhone, and I was like, oh, well, now I never need this thing again. So we're fine.
Yeah, that definitely changed everything. Your a Stinky Feet thing reminded me of something because I'm like, I feel like people don't always necessarily mention stuff like that when it's a smell because they want to be polite. But when I was in choir, like I was maybe like in high school, 16 years old, I would double book myself. Like I'd be in dance competition, theater, and choir, and then we'd like go from a dance convention where you're like literally dancing for 5 hours, and it's like teenagers sweat a lot, and we're probably not like necessarily doing all we're appearance over hygiene. You were like layering clothes to try to be cool. Wearing sweatpants and sweating profusely just because it looks better to dance hip hop in or whatever. And then I'd like show up to choir, and then I would just like. There was a period of time when I was like, I think there's something wrong. My feet smell so bad, and to the point where I was like so self-conscious. And then my mom told me to put coffee filters. I don't know if it actually worked, but she was like, you could do coffee filters. So I like started leaving coffee filters in all my dance bags. But then I would just smell like coffee and sweaty feet everywhere.
Yeah, and for me, is this really a problem, or do I just, when I exercise, do I get sweaty? People they look at me and they think because I go to festivals and all this, they're like, I love being dirty. I do not. Because of my skin issues, if I even go like 1 or 2 days without a shower, I get pretty uncomfortable, which is why like I couldn't go out and like do camping trips and overnights and all this stuff for most of my life. But no, I relish in being clean. Like I love, as soon as I get back from playing tennis in the morning, I jump right in the shower. Like there are no words spoken. I am naked and I am in the water scrubbing myself down to make sure that I do not stink or like get that sweat off me.
Yeah, it sounds like this is more of something that is a part of your guys' relationship that actually is more of a sign of communication than a problem. But I mean, I don't know her well enough to know if it's really a problem, but it's based on how you're describing it, it sounds like it's kind of a fun anecdote. But it is interesting to hear because, like a lot of couples, I mean, I think comedians are more open, but I just feel like a lot of couples probably wouldn't have the comfort level to talk about that. And I think that's a testament to how strong your communication must be. Because even,
oh no, she'll tell me anything like that. Like she will burn me to the ground if it means like she has that level of honesty with me. The other day, I thought she said like I thought she called me a hack, and it's not what she said. She said I misinterpreted. She actually said you're not some wacky comedian, and I thought she said you're just some hacky comedian, and I literally turned to her and I was like, what did you just say? She goes, you're this wacky comedian. I was like, oh, I thought you said hack. She goes, Alex, of all the things I would be happy to call you, I will never ever call you that. And I was like, I'm glad you know that that's where I draw the line. You can call me a deranged, ugly motherfucker. I do not care. If you call me a hack, I'm like, nope. I got all the proof in the world to show you that I'm not that.
Oh my gosh. That is so funny.
There's a deep-seated fear in me because clearly I got really defensive just now when I talked about it.
But your identity also maybe is more tied now to being a comedian and something that you are empowered by, and because you get to, you literally can control the narrative in a healthy way. Like you're improving. You're not like stuck in a place as a comedian, but you're the CEO of that. So I think it makes sense that for so long as a child you felt like you had no control and people had to dictate your perception of yourself. And now you've opened up to being like, whatever, I don't care, except for this one thing where I found myself in, like, you can't take that from me. That makes sense, though, right? Because it's like, you're like, this is me, and now I identify with this, so don't take this away.
Well, because I've never found anything, like, comedy was the biggest, like, of all the things, like, getting into a relationship, the eczema medication, pubs, festivals, all the things that led to me, it's a huge part of it, they're right over there. They're, like, all these things that led to me being the person I am today, the biggest thing of it was finding stand-up comedy and being able to focus all of this manic energy and funnel it into something that was actually creative and was actually servicing me. And that's why, like, I worked so hard on being a good comedian and doing original things that it's become so much of my identity. Like, that is, if you ask me what I am first, am I a man? Am I white? Am I what am I first? Number one, hands down, I am a comedian. Like, I value humor over everything else, and then like human being comes in second. And honestly, like barely even second, because I sometimes don't even consider myself human at all. So,
Well, you could. I mean, I feel like you would, in an alternate universe, make a really happy puppy. Like when you were saying the dog. Well, when the metaphor about you as a kid in a candy store. The other one I was thinking is, I'm sure you've gotten this before, but like a dog that's always happy to see its owner, but also has no owner. Like it's both. Like you're just free, but also always as if like you just saw, the person you love the most. That's like the vibe I get.
I'm fueled by the energy of other people and things that are happening around me, which is why I value live experiences so much, like going to concerts, comedy shows, dance parties, festivals, art museums. When I see other people around me enjoying themselves and expressing themselves, it only motivates me to grow more into myself. And so that was the hardest thing about the pandemic for me, was suddenly I had to be by myself, and I was like, without all of these external factors influencing me, who am I? What do I do without all of that? And there was a lot of like really hard moments, and my depression came. I thought I beat depression years ago. It came raging back at certain moments. Like, I'm sure you had those days too, when you're like, you wake up, but we're in like quarantine. You go, why should I even move today?
Yeah.
What is the point? No one's going to see me. There's no point in trying to be productive, because fucking why? It's the end of the world. And I was like, I literally had to go, wait a minute. What is this? You don't need this. We shoved this way back to the back part of our brain.
Yeah.
We put a boot over it. We squashed it down on its neck and said, you're not allowed anymore. And suddenly it was like, yeah, but I can wriggle out of this and kind of just show up. Remember me? And I was like, oh, fuck. So I had a lot of those things.
I think that is man, because I relate to that in that, like, maybe twice in my adult life where I really, because it was like depressed forever, like in a way where I was like, this is just here. And then twice where I was like, I feel like I found the secret. One time was when, I found improv comedy or whatever, improv, but something life-changing where you're like, whoa, I can see the world in a different way. And then you're like, I beat it. And then when it comes back, you're like, what the fuck? And I think this kind of ties back to what you were saying earlier about sometimes still having those moments where you want to self-sabotage, because I used to be like, no, I need to like kick this out forever. And then now I'm like, this is always a part of me. I think you said something like that, like it's still there, but it's not driving, right? And I like the idea now of thinking like, no, it's there for a reason. Like that alarm bell, that depression is signifying certain changes in the environment and situation and maybe physiologically that I'm feeling in a way where before I couldn't handle it. And now when it's back, I can go, oh, this must mean X, Y, Z. And instead of doing that thing I did before that spiraled me, I will just take the significance of this meaning something in my environment change and deal with the environmental factors instead of myself. And that's helped a bit. But I mean, it's easier said than done. There are still days, of course, when I'm not in my rational brain and I'm spiraling, I'm like, well, let me just self-sabotage. But I now, instead of going, I hate this voice, I go, oh, that's that alarm I set that I just need to figure out how to set it off instead of letting it run. I'm not going to blast this on the PA system. I'm just going to go figure out where it's coming from.
Somebody recommended a book on my podcast. I think it was Aaron Darling, Terralba. It's this book called The Dark Side of the Light Chasers. And so I read it.
That sounds cool.
If you recommend a book to me, more than likely I will probably read it, because over the past couple of years, I've spent a lot of my downtime just reading, and it makes me a better writer, makes my brain work better, all these things. I avoided it for years. I forgot how to enjoy reading books. But when she recommended this one, it's very much like, look, don't try to beat your depression by saying I'm not depressed or let me just be happy. Embrace that
Mm.
part of you as well and let it live with you and realize how to work with it instead of trying to counteract every single time it
Yeah.
picks itself up. And so I very much embrace the fact that I still have this stubbornness and this anger and this depression. It's so much more minimal than it used to be, but it's still there. And honestly, that's where I think a lot of my best writing comes from, because I'm not afraid to get really dark and
Yeah.
violent. And like when I used to write scripts, like they would always end with me, it's in some sort of apocalyptic setting, or I would always die at the end in some grandiose way. And like my friends had to be like, are you okay? Why do you get killed in everything you write? And I'm like, there's just this part of me that loves that kind of loves that sadness and embrace, and
Mm.
I'm not afraid to step into it and just go, you're here, let's
Yeah.
live in you for a while.
It's familiar too, because I think I recently was able to, I'm in a healthy relationship now, but it took me so long. And really, it's not the other people. I had to actually work on myself. I mean, some of them were the other people too. But like, for the most part, the reality is until I could, love myself, it's impossible to have someone love me. And
100%.
yeah, and what you were saying about the like the wanting the familiar, or the, what did you say, the sadness or something you want to live in, I relate to that. And recently I was thinking about that because I had that feeling of like maybe I should self-sabotage, things aren't going too well, and then I like quieted it down, but not by shutting it off. I was like, okay, why are you asking this, Teresa? And I realized it's because the fear of like, oh, when things used to go well and then they went wrong. And it's like, I have no way of knowing if I'll repeat that, but the only way I can hopefully break that is to just trust that it won't happen. And I realized like it's the sadness felt familiar because for so long it's all I knew. So when it was too long without it, it scared me, right? Because it's like, now I don't feel like myself. But I don't want to be myself sad all the time. So it's like that's the transitional period of like being okay with feeling a little not myself while I figure out how to be like this new pace of happiness. But I think people forget that when they are like, why do people look for sadness? It's like, well, if growing up your needs were never met and you're always sad, like that is going to feel more familiar to you than something new.
It's also easier. It's so much easier to sit on your couch and with a tub of ice cream watching shitty TV going, oh, I'm not good enough, everything sucks, than it is to go out and do something with your life. Like that's just the sad truth of it, is like it's way easier to be a piece of shit than it is to be healthy and happy, and it takes work to do it. So I never fault anybody that like has serious, like is going through depressive states and can't figure out how to like get off their ass and go live. I can try to guide them with what little tips and tricks I've learned along the way that have helped me kind of leapfrog past all of this. But I understand, like,
Yeah.
Excelling is difficult and scary. And I think most people, when people are like, you're not afraid of your failing, you're afraid of how powerful and successful you could be. I don't think that's true. I think people are afraid of the work that it will take to get to that status.
And the pain. There's real pain involved. I mean, you can't, the reality is the path to success requires failure. Like you can't get there without failure. And that hurts. And so the fear is real because the pain is real. And I think it's okay. It is. I mean, it's shitty to be like, yeah, no, if you want to get better, you gotta get hurt. And that's going to suck. So I don't know what to tell you. Like,
I tell everyone that anyone that wants to be a comedian or wants to be in entertainment, if anyone ever asks me for advice, the one thing I tell them is you need to learn to be okay with rejection, because you are going to have so many more no's than you will ever have a yes. But every no gets you closer to a yes and will make the yes feel better. And that rejection, you just have to learn how to accept that it's probably not personal. It has nothing to do with you, and that it's gonna be okay. I mean, I get passed over for things all the time, or I audition for things that I don't get, and that's fine. It's all part of this. But when people are like, God, I didn't get another thing, God, I bombed again, this, it's like, you need to calm down, or you're never going to survive this, because you're going to beat yourself up to a point when you are a bloody pulp that is oozing all over the sidewalk.
How do you handle, okay, I'm curious because you have such a like very like healthy attitude towards this, and I mean obviously the further you get in your career and the more successful you get, you're going to have bigger drops, ups and downs, so that makes sense. You have to get better at that or you're not going to get given the like bigger game. But how on the flip side, how are you with like rejecting, like do you, like, it seems like you're really good with boundaries when it comes to you, but like if someone is like, you know, crossing their boundary or asking you for too much, do you have a hard time like saying no? Are you pretty good at like just telling someone like, hey, I don't like you, or like get away, like what's...
I definitely used to not be able to say no to people because I just wanted to please everybody. And at a certain point you realize how will this service me in the end? If I help you, am I taking something away from myself, or am I adding to the overall shared experience of this so I can feel good about helping you? You're going to be glad that I did help. So if I actually think I can be beneficial to you and I have the time, I am more than happy to read your script, watch your tape, whatever you want.
You sure you don't want me to bleep that out? Because no, I'm just kidding.
I get 60.
Oh, the DMs are coming.
Will you watch my hour? Oh, God. I have a Game of Thrones amount of tape to watch. Yeah, no, but I mean, that's if I can do it. But I also I'm not afraid anymore. Like somebody the other day asked me to do their show. They're like, this is my first show. I want you to do it. I'm really excited about it. And 2 years ago, it would have been, yes, of course, I'll be happy to do it. In this case, I said, where's the show? It was a little further away. I said, how long of a set and what's compensation going to be? And they said, it's the first one, so you're going to do 10 minutes. I can't pay you. And even though I wanted to help this person and put on a great first show, I have to value my time. And at this point, I didn't see that as I saw it more as a detriment that I would get to that night and I'd go, oh yeah, I got to go do this show, instead of I get to do this show.
Yeah, and you wouldn't have given like, if you know that you're not in the right mind state to be enjoying it, they're not going to get the like headlining performance, not because you are slacking, not like, you know well enough to just not do it because you don't want to do a bad job, but also they want to run a good show. It's their show. Like, if the fact that you're not on it makes it a bad show, like, that's not their show. That's exactly, they want you to headline, and then they should pay you to headline. You know what I mean? Like,
and look, I'm gonna throw out a number here. Please don't take this. You think it's my rate or anything, but because it was in LA, if she had been like, I'll give you $20, like I would have been like, fine. But I knew getting to that night that I wouldn't feel like I was excited to go do something. It would have felt like a have to more than a desire. And I really try to do that. Anytime I say I have to go do this show, I flip myself. I'm like, no, you get to go do this show.
That's nice.
You're at a point in your career where people are asking you to do things and valuing you, so you should be excited to go do them. But yeah, so I'm getting better. I'm getting better at being like, no, until this is good for both of us.
I think that's really healthy, and I think about when people have said no to me in a rude way versus a healthy way, like how you did. Like, the way you did, because there was a reason and you weren't being an asshole and you had reasons. You don't over-explain. It's just the truth, right? That to me is like so helpful. Like, I don't know if that person will keep doing comedy, but if they do, hopefully they'll get to a point where they close a loop, because when they're in that position, they'll know exactly how to act. Like, I've noticed that people who will like, oh, thanks for asking, I'm unavailable, or whatever, or anybody who's said no, but in a way where I didn't feel was rude, I later have gotten to those points where I'm like, oh man, I feel bad because I can't do this. And then I just think about how someone I admire handled it, and it's been so helpful. So I think you're like adding that positivity to the world. Because if you say yes because you don't want to feel bad, now they're gonna feel like the only way to get people to say yes is to like take advantage, right? Because that's gonna be the pattern you set up. If people are only saying yes because they don't want to look bad, the pattern that person's world will be is a lot of people saying yes when they don't want to, and somebody is gonna have to try to like convince others to say yes, as opposed to feeling comfortable just asking people, not ruining relationships, trusting that they'll say no.
I said the simplest thing. I just said, I thank you so much for offering. It really means a lot. I'm not doing unpaid shows right now, but I really wish you the best. And when you get it going, please hit me up again. You know, so there's no malice involved. There's no just like, how dare you or anything, because I also, for so many years, I started comedy in LA. I spent years not making any money from this. And now things are different. I have to make money from this. So if my time is going to be taken and I'm going to drive 25 minutes to perform for 10 and then drive another 25 back, we're talking overall probably about at least 2 hours of my time that I am giving to this thing. And if I don't feel like I'm going to be excited about it, then there's no reason for me to do it.
Yeah, and then more than likely it's a possibility. I mean, I don't, not that you're someone who cancels, but I've, been on shows, whatever, where a big name will be on it in LA or whatever, because they're like, sure, whatever, and then they won't show up because it's like, there's no reason to. And I think that's generally more detrimental for everyone anyways. And yeah, I think I'm a big fan of, like saying like, in this case, you said no because you couldn't do it, but I'm also a big fan of like when you do say yes to like favors and things because you want to still be clear where like what your value and time is, because that's the kind of shit like America runs on, the legal system and insurance, and it's like they love to be like, look, you didn't deserve this rate because you did this other thing. So now sometimes I'll like do things for friends, of course, comedians, I'm not gonna ask for a SAG rate to act in my friend's short, but when saying yes, I'll be like, oh, I'm available this day. I won't like. I'll let them know like this is a work day I put aside to do this. So like very clear, like I want to be a part of your thing, and I'm taking away from my like regular rate to do this, so that they are aware that it's like, oh, it's not like, oh, you're just saying yes. It's like you made an active choice to say yes to something that typically you wouldn't say yes to because you like it or whatever.
By saying no, you open yourself up to some other possibility that, when I don't get a job, let's just say like they're like I was up for a TV role on a sitcom that would have been like a week's worth of work. And I'm like, oh man, I really wish I would have gotten that week. That would have been great. It would have been so fun, good money. It's like, okay, but now that week is free. So that means anything else could happen during that week. So I don't look at it as that was an opportunity that I missed. That was not my right opportunity.
Yeah, true.
And you have to look at it that way. Other people's successes are not my failures. I went in and I did the best job I could in the audition, in the show, whatever we're talking about. And if I wasn't chosen, that's okay. It's not my fault.
That's true. And then it's interesting when you said the time thing, because I found I just incorporated this year and I like fully went freelance, but it's definitely been interesting like trying to figure out how to value my time. But comedy is so weird like that. Like you have to do some of those bar shows, $10, $20 to build an hour or whatever. And of course, when you do that, your goal isn't to make $10. But at some point, you don't want to lose so much money that you can't, so like it makes sense that why, like for people who don't understand why sometimes you will do a show for free or $5, $10, and why you'll negotiate for like, a couple of grand on other weekends. It's because it goes into that, right? To do that job well on the weekend, when you're getting paid the full rate, it means you've done the work of doing those small shows, which they expect you're doing before you get there. And like, but that is kind of the agreement. They're not like, hey, here's a couple grand, now you have to do 20 shows and then do art. Like they're just like, just come and be ready and do it well, and they expect that's what you're gonna do. And I think when you get further along and you're busier, like you said, taking 2 hours away, that isn't just giving 2 hours. That's, if you have something coming up down the line, that's taking away from your, readiness for that next thing. So I think that's all stuff that gets factored in later that people don't realize. And I think sometimes because people don't realize that, comedians do often get just kind of like kicked to the edge of like, the creator performer pool. And it's nice to like set that straight, because I feel like it's like everyone is working hard and it's not arbitrary. It's just, we just have our own ways of calculating like where your time goes,
Definitely. And one of the hardest questions is like, how do you value yourself? If somebody says, "Hey, Teresa, I need you to write me a 10-minute short script about this product or whatever this scenario, what would you charge for that?" Anytime somebody asks me something like that, I'm like, okay. Who are you? What kind of budget? How much time? I have to ask myself so many questions to figure out what is the rate that I can give you that will make me feel happy to do the job and make you feel like you are also getting a good deal, that I'm not going to scare you. And I recently started doing this thing. I learned it in a online money course that I took. I'm asking for amounts of money that make me uncomfortable.
That's good.
It's so scary because at first what I thought would happen is people would go, "Fuck you! Who the fuck do you think you are? You're some reality TV show piece of shit. You think you're gonna command this much money from me?" That's what I thought would happen. What actually happened is, one, most people said yes.
Yeah.
And some of them said yes so quickly that I was like, oh, I could have even gotten more than that. I devalued myself, but I'm still okay with the amount that I asked for. Or they go, oh, okay, I didn't realize that your rate would be that high. I can't do it right now, but I'm happy things are, and hopefully we can work together in the future. Nobody says, "Oh, look at this big time an asshole." Nobody does that. They just assume if I said, "Teresa, you need $1,000 for you to do this show," and I said I can only pay you 500, I wouldn't go, "Well, fuck her." I'd go, "Dude, she's doing really great. I'm sorry I can't pay her the amount that she needs." And that's what people do. So now I'm okay asking for these amounts of money that previously I would have scoffed at or been too afraid to ask for, because I realize people just look at you and go, "Oh, I didn't realize. I thought he was here. He's actually here."
And once you get a yes, that's your rate. I mean, that is how business. I mean, honestly, all money is a scam, and that's mostly the reason I don't like to negotiate. But because I know it's a scam, I'm also good at negotiating when it comes to like making those choices, because everything makes me uncomfortable, because we should all have enough all the time, but since we don't, I do feel like, yeah, I totally agree with that. And honestly, I welcome that reaction of "fuck you," because I'm like, great, now I know I'll never work with you. Because if that's the reaction, like, really, it doesn't happen much, but sometimes you do get someone who's like bitter, and you're like, well, good, you showed me your colors. Because if that happens, then you know that their goal was never to value in the first place. Their goal was to take advantage. And I love when people, you said people say yes really quickly. You're like, oh, did I devalue myself? That's possible, but the other possibility is they just already wanted you, and they're like, I have maybe an idea of how much I have. Even if it's over, they're like, okay, well, that's how much he costs, so we want him. So yeah, let's fucking do it. Like, nobody's like, oh, Beyonce's this much. Do you think she'll do this? Like, it's like, damn, we can't afford Beyonce, you know?
Funny you mentioned Beyonce, because like 2 months ago, somebody asked me to do an Instagram live with them, someone that I didn't know. And I said, look, they were like, I want to go live with you for an hour with this other person. Will you do it? And I said, if you want me to do that, it's going to cost $100. And they were like, why? It's just an Instagram live. And I was like, because you're taking my
hour
time.
Of your, yeah.
And I was like, because I have to do something, because I have to be in a place for an hour working. That's what that is to me. And they were just like, you're not that famous, honey. You're not Beyonce. Stop trying to think you're better than
Beyonce
this.
wouldn't do it for $100.
No,
she wouldn't respond to your DM.
But that's what I said. I was like, you don't value me. And they're like, no, you should just do our live because we're asking, and that should be enough. And I said, exactly. You don't fucking value my time. So no. And then then I got a series of like the most heinous, like racist, homophobic, misogynistic messages. They said this was a trans person, so they tried to spread it that I was anti-trans. And they were like, this person hates trans.
That's so toxic.
And I was like, I had to block like 7 accounts because they kept making new accounts and trying to message me through there and bring me back to the chat. And I don't block anybody. I do not do it.
That's manipulative. That is the kind of like, yeah, that's definitely abuser behavior. I mean, I'm not saying that person's abuser, but that's the kind of pattern you see when people are like, oh, why won't you do this? Why don't you love me? If you love me, you do it. Like that shit. Because it's like, if you love me, you wouldn't put me in this position. But that's wild. I mean, just holding a mirror up to someone like that, like they can see. In a way, it is, I'm sure they're on their own journey too. Because when you think about it, like if they don't think it's possible your time's worth $100. They probably don't think their time could be worth that much. And that is sad because it's like everyone's time can be worth that much. You just have to like, grow your skills and character and be proud and confident. And I'm sure that person wants to be a creator if they asked you to do that. So hopefully they find their way. They're probably on their journey. I'm sorry you had to deal with that, but I'm glad that you are strong and able to.
I deal with shit like that all the time. It's part of being on a major TV show is that you're gonna get these DMs, and most of them are so kind that I do take a second out of my day to just respond with "Thank you so much. That means a lot. I'm so glad you're a fan," whatever it may be, just something so that they feel appreciated and seen. But the other side of that is you do get these people that think they know you because they're connected to you through social media, even though we don't know each other. Like I posted about a friend of mine dying, and I had 3 people that I literally don't know be like, "I'm so sorry to hear about your friend. Call me if you need to talk." Wow. And that's so sweet of them. It's so kind. But I also like in my mind, I'm like, I don't even know you. I am like, and that's so nice. But there are people I will call if I really need to like break through this,
Yeah,
so
that's so funny. I mean, I've gotten some like that as well. But usually it'll be like, "I'm sad" on Twitter, and then it'll be like, are you okay? And then I do feel bad because I'm like, oh, I mean, no, but yeah, like I put it on Twitter, so yes, like yes, like I am okay. I'm not like I am just sad, but I'm not so sad I want to talk to a stranger. But like sad enough, I'm like sad enough to want attention, but not like this. Like give me different attention.
Sometimes people will project whatever they want onto your Twitter and Instagram post. So you might have meant it like a little bit sarcastic, a little bit real, but they go, "Oh no, Teresa's in trouble. She's got a noose around her neck right now. We better say something."
It's like, I mean, I'm not saying it's not possible, but if that was happening, I wouldn't be on Twitter. So it's like, but I don't follow anyone. That is kind of on me, but it is kind of funny when that happens because like, oh no, that's not what I was hoping for. Like I was just hoping, what, here's a picture of my butt. That'll work. It's like.
You always do have good butt photos.
Yeah. That is when I'm like, that's more when I'm like, I don't want to deal with people actually being like, "Are you okay?" Because I'm like, I am fine. I just want attention right now. And which means I'm not, but I will be when you give me attention.
I think you'll appreciate this. Actually, I know you'll appreciate this. In October of 2019, I remember exactly where I was. I was doing shows in Eureka, California, with my friend Bronston Jones, who runs the Venice Underground, another awesome person. We're up there doing shows. We're driving through the Redwoods. There's a strip of it called the Avenue of the Gods, I believe it's called. And it's these for like 40 miles, just the biggest trees you've ever seen lining the way, completely canopied over. What? And we went to go make an Instagram story while we were in there to promote our show. And I opened Instagram, and because there was no service, it wouldn't show me anything except whatever the top picture was, and it was a picture of your butt. And
yes,
it was doing the thing where I'm trying to get it to can't refresh feed. Here's Teresa's butt again.
Oh my god, my butt was harassing you.
He goes, "I'm sorry, what are we looking at here? I thought we were going to make a video." I was like, "I can't get off her butt. The internet only wants me to look at this."
Oh my god, I love that. That is so funny. I think that's a great place to end. I had a quick, maybe we could do like a truncated version of this game on our way out. Do you have time, like 5 minutes?
Yeah, go for it.
Okay, cool, because I like to end on a fun little, sometimes we get heavy, which we did in a great way. It's like a roller coaster. Okay, this is the game I want to play. It's a very simple game. It's called The Secret to Happiness, and kind of inspired by your podcast and my podcast, secrets and joy and, whatever. But I very recently found out I'm the last one in my friend group to get engaged. Like, the last girl in our group just got engaged, and, no problem. I'm happy to be a comedian, and I'm on a different timeline. But I have attended enough weddings now that I can fill out a punch card, which means I think I'm legally allowed to skip the next one, which will probably be mine. But basically, I've sat through enough weddings now to understand why people like Joe Rogan and why people say things like happy wife, happy life. Like, it's just, there's a different world out there, I think. So this game is kind of inspired by the happy wife, happy life mentality of, the dads who make that speech. But in this game, it's kind of, it's like a fill in the game, It's a fill it in the blank improv game. I will start a sentence like happy wife, happy life. You'll finish it. Here's an example. Okay. And these are all fake, so you can say whatever you want. If you're smiling while you're filing, then the work is never piling. So in that case, I would say the first part and you would say the second. Very much just a silly little game. Okay, so I have a couple. So here's one. Don't frown because your tire's flat. Smile because
your wallet is fat.
Ooh, that's a good one. All right, I like that one. If it's dark, turn on the light. If blank.
If it's out, then do not pout.
Ooh, that's good. I like that. Okay. Sometimes there's a fly in your food. Sometimes blank.
And sometimes that fly is actually a genie that will whisk you into a magical world of good.
Ooh,
I tried to rhyme food with good.
I love it. I love it. I definitely I feel like I went from giving you very easy ones to just completely abstract. So I think you killed it. I think we learned a lot today. You have many secrets of happiness to take away. So Alex, tell our confidants where they can find your work, where they can follow you, catch your shows, all that plugging.
Yup. So hoopercomedy.com has all of my tour dates. It has my blog posts. It has videos. You can also buy my book, Roast Yourself to Happiness, available on my website.
Oh, heck yeah. Oh my God, congrats. That's awesome.
That, my specials on there, and then Hooper Hair Puff on all social media for all of your needs. Achilles Heel Podcast. All the stuff.
Send him your screenplay. He really wants to read it.
I do.
Don't edit it. First drafts only. This podcast, you can follow at Tell Me Anything Pod on Instagram and follow me at Teresa Lee on Instagram. Thank you so much. Thank you for listening to You Can Tell Me Anything. You Can Tell Me Anything is a comedic podcast created and produced by Teresa Lee on the Hoo Ha Ha Podcast Network. The Hoo Ha Ha team is Ashley McAtee, Audrey Povar, Maggie Reith Austin, Cardi Assad, and Stephanie Bignot. The theme song for this podcast was created by Cody Johnston. The outro music was written by Shipwrecked Sailor. And the Hoo Ha Ha app can be found in the Apple Store to stream your favorite comedy series and laugh out loud podcasts by the funniest women in comedy. To contact this podcast specifically, you can email tellmeanythingpod@gmail.com and follow us on Instagram at tellmeanythingpod. Thank you.